I am Tom at Just One Pack, and this is AC on the Short Alpha Clash podcast, where I talk all things Alpha Clash. On my way to work usually, but it's Easter, so I'm off work. Anyway, that's not... with that bit of errata to the usual startup, that also is a segue into what I want to talk about, which is erratas. So let's dig into that. So the point of errata to cards in a card game. But let me start somewhere else. I record and release these podcasts on Mondays, which means that the big announcement on the errata of Alpha Aster, the Contender, came just after I recorded and released this. That is sometimes what happens when you do a Monday morning podcast. But anyway, the things will happen during the week. The point, whether that was a good or bad choice, but I can speak to that. I have not looked that much into Alpha Aster. I'm always sort of a set or two behind in getting to brew with the cards, so I haven't had that much of a look at Alpha Aster. But what I gathered from the talk on Discord and the on Facebook groups and so on, Alpha Aster was pretty damn strong. I mean, when Genesis came out, I thought that would for sure completely ruin the game. Maybe not ruin the game, but completely tilt it. And the first competitions we saw with Genesis, he was very, very strong. He still is, but he's not overwhelmingly strong, so he's not unbeatable. The notion was a little bit with Alpha Aster that he would in fact be unbeatable. So there was a lot of talk about that, and on Tuesday last week, Rising Empire Studio chose to give him an update, an errata to the card text. Now, so that, and if you haven't seen, there is, I'll leave a link to the article. They errated 3 cards at that time. That made me think of how does errata actually, how does it impact the game as a whole? For the competitive players and for deck brewers such as me, that does make a difference. One of the key things with the way TCGs works is that you have just-in-time rules. So you set up a base rule set, even though that base can be big. Like if you ever try to read the comprehensive rule book for Alpha Clash or for any of the big games or the competitive games, they are quite comprehensive. But that sets up the basic perimeters of the game, the timing and stuff like that. And then the text on the card is actually rules text that is delivered to you just in time when they take effect. If that had been a board game, all those rules would have been in the rule book, and you had to look them up, right? Not so with TCGs or card games like this, collectible card games, expandable card games. Really. That the rule book is just a framework where the cards are the just-in-time rules that show up, right? So for that to be the correct rules has an impact. Of course it does. Which is why judges are required to keep up to date with erratas, for instance. Now, but the amount of impact it does have varies very, very much. So let me give you an example. If we pretend if there were only 2 level of players, so to speak, there were the competitive players that went to tournaments and tried to win prizes and stuff like that. For them, an errata text has a massive impact but potentially could have a massive impact. I'm very sure that those who have built around Alpha Aster, moving forward to the competition, the organised play season coming up, for them that has an impact, a real impact. The tests, the builds, the strategies they have been putting together is now changed. They don't work as they used to. So their builds are no longer valid, maybe at all, right? They might be leaning on having this multiple, the effect of Alpha Aster, fire off multiple times per turn, and now it doesn't, right? So the whole strategy of the deck may have changed there. For in the other end of the spectrum, for the kitchen table games or the casual games at a cafe, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, a core component of just-in-time rules is that, to quote the professor of Tolarian Community College, reading the card explains the card. So if you know the premises, if you know the framework of the rules, reading the card will actually explain what the card does and have the keywords for timing and placement and all these things will be on the card. That will be known factors, right? However, that is not true when the card has been errated, at least with physical card games, right? Then you might end up with two different copies. And for the competitive player, you need the right copy so you can not have that mental load, or either on yourself or your opponent. For casual players, it really doesn't matter much. And it struck me how little it means. I was play testing. So I only play casually, if you did not know. I play with a local game group. We meet about once a month, and then then I do some deck building stuff. And some test games with my kid, right? So, and we were testing some of these, and as I was testing this and thought about the podcast, maybe some of these cards actually have an errata text. For the purpose of this game test, for the purpose of the monthly meetups, that doesn't matter. It turns out one of the cards actually did have an errata. I sort of knew that, but it's the Haven, the card draw Haven, the resourceful helper, something like that. She does have an errata. You actually need to have another Earth card out. You can't just have that. The text on the card is not correct. Now, in most cases, that doesn't matter. But if I were on competitive level, it would matter, right? So having the errata text is important for part of the game and really unimportant for the other part of the game. What it could do for casual players is create a bit of confusion when the same card has two different texts. But it is manageable, to say the least, right? The problem is all the middle ground. So all the middle ground is where the high end, if we imagine a bar where casual players, kitchen table players, one end, and let's put them on bottom just so we can talk about up and down, not left and right. So if you put casual players, the kitchen table casual players that bought a clash kit and is playing with them like a board game, right, at the very bottom, and all the way up to the Pro Tour winning bunch, right? That level of competitive. For the top level there, doesn't matter. They know the erratas just as well as the judges, maybe even better. They choose the cards with the right text if need be, and so on and so forth, right? And the very bottom doesn't matter. they don't have a level of play where the errata text really matters, right? So even banned card doesn't matter there. So if you bought a couple of Moxie Magnate decks, right, and are playing with the zero cost clash buffs, it doesn't matter. They're banned. They're one of the 5 cards actually banned. That doesn't matter, because the power level is not at a point where that really does any difference. The trouble is all the players in the middle, those who are moving into a more competitive scene, and the ones wanting to have ambitions for more, right? There is the problem. There's where the feel bad is going on. Now, I do not disagree if someone would say, well, the rules clearly state that if you put in a deck list and sign up for competition, one of the things you have to check is that your deck is tournament legal. I'm not saying anything else. What I'm talking about is not whether or not it's right or wrong, but the feel bad moments, whether it's bad or good. So once you start climbing this from your first class casual player, never played a TCG, and up towards a Pro Tour level, there is a time where you don't know these things. When you show up at what I hope will be a common thing, right? When you show up at the Awakening, because now you want to try this out, right? And then you show up at the Awakening and you are presented with you present your deck and it's not legal, or even worse, and this is a real feel bad moment, where you are playing a game and you play a card that does not say, that doesn't do what it says on the card, right? And your opponent knows. Now your opponent, and this is one of we have a great community here, so it's not a problem yet, but I've seen this and been the receiving end in a Magic community, right? Where someone tells me that my card does not do what I think it does. If it's because I don't know the rules and there are timing issues, that is a small feel bad. Say, oh God, I didn't know. I know no rule. If the card text is wrong, which is what it would be if it has been errated, right? Then it's just a feel bad moment. You cannot do what you wanted to do, and you're in a even not a really toxic moment, being scolded, right? So that is a really, really feel bad moment. That is where I see the biggest issues with erratas, right? That is where the game can turn people off if they are trying to move from their kitchen table, not knowing much about the game, and moving into even just down to your local at the rivalry, the rivalry pursuits. Even at that level, when you play there, as soon as you play against people that are not inherently your friends, you run into these issues that people say, well, it doesn't actually do that, what it says on the card, because that card has been changed. No, that is just a feel bad moment. So obviously you want to avoid having erratas, or at least have erratas that does not really matter, or obvious errors, right? But again, they're only obvious to the less casual player, unfortunately. So there is a feel bad about it. So they are, and I'm not saying Rising Empires 2 is not on that page. We'd rather not have them. We'd rather not have erratas on cards, but sometimes they will happen. I think it was Mike Rosewater from Magic the Gathering fame creation I said that the first day of a release of a new Magic set has more testing hours than they have done in all the production and setup and testing prior to that point. So just within the first day. That, of course, is Magic. The percentage might change with Alpha Clash. I'm sure it does, but it could quickly get to a point where there are a lot more eyeballs on the cards after release, or the weeks, just 2-3 weeks after release, than there is in the whole setup and testing period prior to that. So mistakes will happen. That leads me to an interesting point. How many times have we had these erratas? Right? We only have 4 bans, so we're very far off from the Yu-Gi-Oh list. Right? We're even far off from Magic. There are only 5 bans in Alpha Clash. Those are the 5 original 0-cost Clash buffs, right? Which I'm fine with that. That is very handleable. What we do have of erratas is we have 24 erratas. Now that, at first glance, I thought this is quite a new game. That's quite a lot of erratas. It's something like around 5 a set. But truth be told, a non-significant amount of those are not testing errors. It's sort of a quality assurance error. It's a printing error, right? It is misspellings. It is getting the wrong affiliation symbol on. I know there was there was a discarded that had a Harbinger or Progenitor logo affiliation, right? Stuff like that. And that is really unfortunate, but that is what will happen in the beginning of a game, especially one that has so much. Well, that it will happen. You can't hold that. These kind of errors will happen, and they are, of course, more predominant if you are a small team with a lot of throughput, and it is a price I am more than willing to pay for all the things coming out of Alpha Clash to have to deal with a small number of erratas. Now, moving forward, I would expect erratas, quality control erratas would diminish, become almost a non-thing. But I also know that there's been a period of, I don't know, I would guess that the period up until around ClashCon, where these sets were to get finished, where Genesis Returns just come out, where the Pro Tour was happening, where the PvE was starting to form, where the board game was starting to form. This is a small team, remember, where we started talking about the second novel. We were talking about the audiobook. We were talking about the series of comic books, right? I know we haven't got them yet, but the plans were there. The deals, the reservation of printers, the amounts, all this stuff has to happen at the same time for a fairly small team. So these things will happen. I suspect that there will be fewer of them going forward. Also, there was a change of design team where Rich, if I understand correctly, where Rich was used to be the predominant, and then it had to go over. So there's a lot of work going in. There was a lot of happening right there, right? So these things, I guess they will diminish over time. We will see less of these erratas. The positive side of erratas, though, is that they are trying to do new things, and we gotta respect them pushing the envelope to make it more fun for us, right? Careful about the power envelope, but still pushing it, making it a little bit fun. That is not an entirely bad thing. Anyway, that was my points for now. Yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.